Hello, my name is John Nagoski. I have been an English teacher for 20 years. I'd like to introduce you to my channel, English with Subtitles. The Tale of King Shahryar and of his brother King Shahzaman. It is related that Allah is all-wise and all-knowing, all-powerful and all-beneficent, that there was, in the tide and show of ancient time, and the passage of the age and of the moment, a king among the kings of Sasan, in the isles of India and China. He was master of armies and auxiliaries, of slaves and of great following, and he had 2 sons, one tall and the other small. Both were heroic horsemen, but the taller was the greater in this exercise, and reigned over lands, and governed with justice among men, so that the peoples of the land and of the kingdom loved him. His name was King Shahryar. The smaller brother was King Shahzaman, and ruled over Samarkand al-Azam. Both lived in their countries, and were just rulers of the people for a space of 20 years, by the end of which time each was at the height of his splendor and his growth. This was the way with them until the tall king was seized by a violent longing to see his brother. Then he commanded his wazir to depart and return with him, and the wazir answered, "I hear and I obey." The wazir set out, and arriving in all security by the grace of Allah, entered the presence of the brother, wished him peace, and told him the purpose of his journey. King Shahzaman answered, "I hear and I obey." Then he made preparations for his departure, and for the going out of his tents, his camels and mules, his slaves and fighting men. Lastly, he raised his own wazir to the governorship, and departed to seek the lands of his brother. But in the middle of the night he recalled a thing which he had left forgotten at the palace. Returning and entering, he found his wife stretched on her bed, and being embraced by a black slave. At this sight the world darkened before his face, and he said within his soul, "If such a thing has come to pass when I have hardly left the city, what would the conduct of this wanton be if I were absent for a long at my brother's house?" So he drew his sword, and with one stroke killed them upon the carpets of the bed. Then he returned, and, ordering his camp to move forward, journeyed through the night till he came to his brother's city. Beneficent Aunt. My beneficent neighbor gives out meals to the poor every Sunday. My beneficent neighbor gives out meals to the poor every Sunday. Memories fade with the passage of time. Memories fade with the passage of time. Despite the passage of half a century, tension still exists between the two countries. Despite the passage of half a century, tension still exists between the two countries. The ship finally dropped anchor at a beautiful isle of the Marquesas. The ship finally dropped anchor at a beautiful isle of the Marquesas. We wanted to vacation on an isle that was not a huge tourist attraction. We wanted to vacation on an isle that was not a huge tourist attraction. When my grandmother retired, she joined the hospital auxiliary team that visited lonely patients. When my grandmother retired, she joined the hospital auxiliary team that visited lonely patients. Auxiliary equipment. Auxiliary equipment. His heart was filled with longing for Cynthia. His heart was filled with longing for Cynthia. He gazed at her, his eyes full of longing. He gazed at her, his eyes full of longing. His governorship was marked by fairness and prosperity. His governorship was marked by fairness and prosperity. After losing the presidency in 1960 and the California governorship in 1962, he came back to be elected president in 1968. After losing the presidency in 1960 and the California governorship in 1962, he came back to be elected president in 1968. Excellent conduct. Excellent conduct. The club has a strict code of conduct. The club has a strict code of conduct. Wanton extravagance. Wanton extravagance. Wanton behavior. Wanton behavior.